Hello and welcome to Cargo Masterminds presented by cargo.one. My name is Reggie John and you are watching Cargo Masterminds presented by cargo.one. This is our weekly episode where we bring leaders from global logistics and aviation companies for a one-to-one conversation. IndiGo is India's largest passenger airline operated by Interglobe Aviation Limited. Started in August 2006, IndiGo has grown from a carrier with one plane to a fleet of 274 aircraft today and claims a market share of 57% of India's passenger traffic. Over the last few years, IndiGo has also been slowly and steadily building its cargo business and growing its cargo volume carried in the bellies of its passenger aircraft. As per the IATA's World Air Transport Statistics for 2020, IndiGo is among the top 25 carriers in the world in scheduled freight tons carried and scheduled cargo tons kilometers for domestic freight. Earlier this year, IndiGo decided to add freighters into its fleet, and we could see IndiGo operating narrow-body Airbus A321 passenger-to-freighter converted aircraft in the Indian domestic and subcontinent markets as early as the second half of 2022. To discuss the cargo roadmap and how IndiGo wants to maintain its leadership position in the Indian air cargo market and facilitate easy access to new markets for Indian exporters through air corridors, I am joined by Willy Boulter, Chief Commercial Officer at IndiGo. Willy has been in the airline business for over 35 years. He has worked with Cathay Pacific for 20 years and then with Virgin Atlantic Airways, South African and Etihad. From what I know of Willy, I know that he is passionate about the cargo business. Willy, welcome to Cargo Masterminds. Thanks for making time for us.
Thank you very much, Luigi. It's great to be here. And, I've been looking forward to this interview, having known some of your other victims in the past and, really happy to participate.
Thanks, Willy. Willy, a lot has changed since my last interview. I want to take you back to March 2019 in Singapore during IATA WCS conference. Cargo was a significant. You had 80-20 ratio of domestic versus international freight. Back then, IndiGo had absolutely no interest in operating freighters. 2 years and 8 months later, the world is all lot different. Aviation has and going through and continue to go through one of the worst challenges in its history. Soon, perhaps as early as the second half of 2022, you will operate freighters, at least 2 converted A321 P2Fs. Could you recall a few of the biggest highlights of the last 21 months?
Well, it has, as you mentioned, it's been a very challenging and a very difficult period for all of us, I think, in the aviation industry, and especially the airlines. And really, cargo has been a brighter spot. I suppose that in terms of accomplishments, for us, one of the major efforts was using our fleet to carry just cargo. And we started off in June of 2020, once we were allowed to operate again, because remember, India was completely shut down in terms of aviation for about 2 months. But in that period, we started to get the approvals and to gear ourselves up to operate so-called cargo in cabin charters, where we took our passenger fleet around 10 aircraft at times. I think the maximum was 12, which we had converted in a minor way to cover the cargo, to be able to carry cargo in seats. And that business sort of grew probably faster than we all thought. Of course, with the lack of wide-bodied international capacity coming into and out of India, there was quite a lot of international opportunities to deploy this capacity, but also domestically, again, we found that there was demand. So totally, we now have operated over 7,800 of these cargo in cabin charters. And it was a very significant part of our strategy to cope with the pandemic. IndiGo was fortunate. We had a pretty healthy cash balance going into the pandemic. Obviously, that's been decremented to an extent, but we're still, as I think anyone who saw our latest financial results will see, we still have a very strong balance sheet. And we believe that cargo can become an increasingly important part of the airline. as we go forward.
So, Willy, do you still operate cargo-only passenger flights? Do you still carry freight on the seats?
Well, what has naturally happened, and as really we predicted, was that as the passenger market came back, the demand to use the aircraft in passenger, the normal passenger configuration, this obviously increased. And in fact, during the daytime, our whole fleet now is pretty committed to flying passenger, flying the missions for which the aircraft was designed. The cargo in cabin was really just a way of helping cash flow and so on at that time. And given that there was a lot of demand, but quite naturally, these aircraft are designed to fly passengers, and that's what they should be doing. So gradually that fleet, as it were, of 10 aircraft that we had at one stage has gradually come down. And now it's one or two aircraft operating on cargo in cabin charters, and indeed we anticipate that will fall to zero in due course. But as you mentioned, we have taken the opportunity to convert or to acquire some A321 CEO aircraft to convert into full freighter configuration, and the first one has just gone into Singapore Technologies ST to get that conversion accomplished, which will take several months. But we look forward to that aircraft joining our fleet sometime in the first half, actually, of 22, and then a second one shortly afterwards.
Okay, I'll come back to your freighter fleet later in the discussion. But before that, did you have any of your aircraft stripped off at the seats to accommodate more cargo in the last 20 months?
Well, historically, we kept the seats in, but we are actually, as we speak, we are converting one aircraft as something of an experiment, and taking the seats out because we have specific charter business which we think will take up the time on that aircraft.
Willy, on back to the question of air freight capacity, which has been under severe stress for the last 21 months, and it is likely to stay that way for some more time. As a result, freight rates have been very volatile and they continue to remain elevated. What is your mid to long-term outlook for IndiGo's cargo business?
Historically, the air cargo market in India has grown not at a breakneck pace by any means. I mean, it's the growth, both import and export, has been much slower than the passenger growth. So one's talking single-digit numbers in terms of percentage growth in the market. As IndiGo, we appreciate that, but a lot of our efforts over the last 2-3 years have been directed at getting a higher share of that market, and domestically as well. I mean, not just talking internationally. And we've been pretty successful in doing that. I mean, our original share when I arrived was in the sort of mid-20s in terms of percentage, but it's now closer, it's regularly in the mid-40s. So we're pretty happy with that. And we think that we have some natural advantages, if you like, with the amount of connectivity that we can give, albeit narrow-bodied. But we think that we're a good partner for people bringing goods into India and similarly exporting goods. We've got a lot of demand from other airlines. We're carrying a lot of bonded cargo, and with the freighters and with the ULD capability, we think that business will continue to grow, so that, for instance, you can connect containers and pallets from points in the south or smaller points, manufacturing points, through Delhi or through Bangalore or through Kolkata, wherever it is, to export, and obviously the reverse as well. So we have concentrated on cargo, and under Vipin Mola, who's our Vice President of Cargo, we've had a lot of success, and the growth is there for everyone to see. So we understand that there's always competition and so on, but we're steadily and slowly, growing our market share and becoming the sort of major cargo player that we should be.
Willy, has the ratio of 80-20 in favor of domestic versus international, has that changed right now?
I'm hopeful that it will change. I'm hopeful that the export-led economy will become a reality in India, because I think there's certainly opportunities. If you look economically, obviously China, has its own issues, and a number of manufacturers, I think, moved operations from China into places like Vietnam, obviously Bangladesh, India to an extent, and I'm hopeful that will benefit the Indian economy in the longer run, and we think there is an opportunity because historically, 90% of the freight into and out of India has been taken by foreign carriers, but we believe that it's time that the domestic carriers took a higher share of that, and we look forward to participating in that growing market. Whether it will grow faster than single-digit percentages is hard to say, and it's always hard to predict how these markets move. But as I say, we are focused on getting a good share of that market, and following the growth upwards as it will go in that direction without a doubt.
Okay, on back to the freighters, when do you expect to have the rollout of your freighter? You said you would expect to get it in the first half of 2022, and do you expect to begin commercial operations in the first half or on the second half?
These programs are always a little bit unpredictable in terms of the precise dates. It's quite a major job to convert that A321, and it's the first one. So, I'm always very realistic. I'm always, I'm unwilling to sort of make bold statements in saying it's going to definitely arrive on such and such a date. There's an amount of process that we've got to go through, obviously, in terms of getting it certified for operations within India. And, I've said consistently that it will be the first half of 22. But as I say, it's just gone in for conversion, and that will be several months. So it will be towards the end of the first half, probably.
And as of now, you have 4 A321 CEO, the current engine options. So have you sourced all of the 4 aircraft, and have you sourced it from your own fleet?
Yes, we have sourced the aircraft. And just to be clear, I mean, these are aircraft that were operating for other carriers. The A321 passenger to freighter conversion is only available on CEO aircraft, not on the Neo versions as yet. We're hopeful that Airbus will come up with a design for a Neo conversion, but I think that's still some way in the future. So we have sourced, together with a couple of lessors, we have sourced 4 aircraft. We have the slots for conversion, and the program, as I mentioned, is underway.
And do you have the slots for all the 4 booked?
Yes, we do.
Willy, do you intend to add more aircraft for conversion?
Well, we are, we're not, writing that off. I mean, we have decided, so far to go with 4. I think it's important to see, post-pandemic, which way the market is going, whether it's going to continue very fast growth, which we've seen with the e-commerce and so on recently, or whether the growth will be moderated. We also need to test ourselves in terms of what contracts and what customers we can get, and the response so far in the market's been very encouraging. And I think people have liked what we've done on cargo in cabin. It's opened up a number of new customers to us, and I think they're looking forward to us getting full freighter capability with containers and pallets, and being able to service some of these very large forwarders and shippers, both internationally and domestically.
Are you evaluating any other P2F conversion programs? There are quite a few launched in the last 2 years. Everyone wants a freighter.
Yes, no, I think we're focused on the 321, and the reason for that is that our body of pilots can obviously fly the 321 very easily. There's no need for conversion course, or if there is, it's it's very short. They just have to be familiar with the freighter aspects of the airplane, and so that we have this vast pool of pilots, and the 321, in addition, is a very capable narrow body freighter in that it provides 24 container positions, which is 10 way more than you can get on a 737, because you can also containerize the lower deck. So I think it's it's an aircraft which fits our strategy, and indeed that's really the principal reason we went with the 321 B2F, because it is consistent with the rest of our fleet, and it should be no surprise to us in terms of operating. And we think it's a very capable aeroplane, and as freighters, narrow body freighters, particularly 757s and so on, come into sort of age-related issues, the 321 conversions will actually be very sought after. And that's why we're delighted, to have these 4 slots and to be able to convert the 4 airplanes. Whether we go beyond that, I can't say at the moment, but obviously it's a good start.
Since we are actually talking about freighters, I like to get you to talk about a general observation about the new models of freighters coming out of A350 freighter version and then 777X freighter version likely. How do you look at some of these development? Because there is a kind of surge in terms of new programs on the conversion side of wide body aircraft into freighters, and then there are new production freighter programs. How do you look at those development in the aviation industry?
Well, taking off my sort of IndiGo hat and just sort of talking about long-term developments in the industry, and I've been involved with freighters since 1981. I remember the first thing I did in the freighter market was actually sign a charter for 100 tons of mangoes to go from Manila to Hong Kong on 747-200 freighter that Cathay had at the time. And what you see, and it's the same with the passenger side too, to an extent, is that you have this rush of sort of enthusiasm, a rush of programs and orders and so on in the airline business. And usually those orders then arrive, 3-4 years later, whatever, just in time for the next recession or the next downturn or the next sort of pandemic or whatever it might be. So I think, there's no doubt that with the rise of e-commerce and so on, probably air cargo is, in a good place. But one has to, I think, look back with a sort of 30-year lens and say, well, yes, air cargo has grown, and it has, gone through spurts of growth, particularly around China, when the Chinese economy became extremely export-led in the 90s, and then in that sort of 2000, certainly until 2007-8, China was absolutely booming, and people were putting capacity in where they could find it, and so there have been good spurts of growth. But when you're investing in aircraft, you have to take a pretty long view, in my mind, and we'll see what transpires. But I'm always in favor of sort of steady acquisition and not sort of rushing into things, because consistency is what wins in the airline business, and you can't necessarily sort of make quick money by getting your timing right. That you should always assume the timing's wrong, because history shows that those markets go through the ebb and the flow, and it's quite hard to predict exactly where you're going to be. Having said all that, yes, of course, it's exciting. The 777-300 ER conversions will be interesting to watch, and indeed the 350 freighter. Of course, it's on paper it will be a wonderful aeroplane. So I think, yeah, we are obviously keep a weather eye on that, but as I say, at the moment, our focus is very much on the 4 321 P2Fs that are coming in 22, 23.
Therefore, none of us should be surprised. Maybe 10 years from now, you actually IndiGo adds a 350 freighter into its fleet. So we're looking forward to that.
Yes, well, never say never.
Willy, where do you intend to deploy the freighters that are coming in by next year? Is that only in the Indian domestic market, or do you also intend to deploy them into the Indian subcontinent market?
Yeah, I mean, our plan has very much international as well as part of it to the regional destinations that we've seen with the cargo in cabin charters, which we've been doing. We've been operating extensively to places like Singapore, Bangkok, Yangon, Hong Kong, and then in the Gulf side into Dubai, Sharjah, Muscat occasionally. So there's definitely demand, we think, for freighters. And we'll see how the market develops. One thing I think to note, though, is that the cargo market and the lanes kind of change over time quite quickly. It's not the same as the passenger market, where traditionally one could go into, say, an origin and destination which is very strong, and then you'll be there forever. You can go into some cargo markets, and there will be demand for a year or two, but then there'll be some other solution to those particular logistics, and you'll find the market will shift. So I think we're very conscious of that, and so yes, of course, we've done a plan for these aeroplanes. And that involves a mix of domestic flying and international flying around the region. But that plan will inevitably change as we get closer to the arrival of the aeroplanes.
When your freighter program was launched and the announcement was made by the IndiGo CEO early this year, and he said cargo business goes beyond the special circumstances. He was referring to the special circumstances, the pandemic. It was not just because of the pandemic that you intend or you decided to launch the freighter fleet. So is it fair to conclude that cargo will be very, very critical to the overall business of IndiGo?
Yeah, I think that there's been a realization that which of course I realized 30 years ago, I guess, but cargo is often a stepchild of airlines, and people don't really focus on it much. But you have this capacity, you have this space which is almost free flying around if you're a passenger airline, and so you must make the most use of it. And one theme on that line is that I believe that airlines should very much keep the cargo element in-house and should manage it themselves. And I'm certainly, as a few people in the industry know, I'm certainly not one for outsourcing the cargo sales, because I think then you're giving the opportunity to extract value. You're giving that opportunity to someone else. You may be getting a constant stream of income or whatever, but I think that's almost lazy. I think you have to manage the space that you're flying around in the passenger airplanes. You've got to manage that space yourself and extract value from it. And I'm delighted to say that Vipin and his team, we've seen great results, especially over the last 3, 4, 5 months, as the passenger aircraft has come back. And you mentioned the rates earlier. Rates generally have been reasonably firm, and I think, as I say, we're in a good place with cargo, and we're very excited to have these freighters arriving.
According to IATA's World Air Transport Statistics for 2020, IndiGo is actually among the top 25 carriers domestic, both in terms of scheduled freight tons carried and scheduled cargo ton kilometers. Of course, I don't think the numbers that IATA quoted is the fair number, because I remember in 2019 you said annually you carry something around 250,000 tons. What are the numbers looking like in 2021? Of course, 2020 was a completely different story.
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on the IATA numbers. I don't know exactly where we're based on those. I haven't seen the table, but I think certainly we continue to grow the tonnage recently, and I mentioned that figure of 250,000. I think we'll be, we'll beat that for sure over the next year, and we have beaten it over the past 12 months. So, generally the cargo is doing well. But for me, tonnage is one thing, but it's not actually the critical thing. The critical issue is the revenue, and we've been encouraged by the development of both the domestic and the international rates over the last 12 months or so, and we are pleased with how that's going.
Willy, going forward, how significant will be cargo volume coming from the e-retail part of the e-commerce, both domestic and cross-border?
Well, I mean, it's what everyone talks about, and clearly, we are doing business with all these guys, and we are getting good support, mainly domestically, but also coming in from China. We've done a lot of charters, and I think there's a lot more demand in that market. So clearly, it's an important component. But let's face it. I mean, most of these guys, they don't want to ship by air if they can avoid it. And domestically, I think with the road networks getting better, with their own distribution, warehousing network, and so on, I don't see it as a I think you've got to keep your feet on the ground. I don't see it as a panacea for air cargo. I think it will be significant, and it's important, together with, for instance, the express courier markets and so on. They're all important markets, and that's the beauty in a way of air cargo, is that it is quite a diversified business. I mean, we found ourselves carrying lots of auto parts, for instance, within India. When the auto manufacturers run short, they have problems with inventory, then they'll use air cargo. Pharma, obviously, another huge part of the market, and then you've got the whole perishable market, both vegetables and seafood. And even live goats and stuff. There's a huge variety of air cargo and commodities available for a freighter operation in particular, but also a general cargo operator. So I think, as I say, let's keep our feet on the ground and let's harvest the business which is there across all these commodities and all these opportunities.
Willy, as the freighters join your fleet next year, will you have very specific products created, products which actually bring in high yield, whether it is temperature controlled pharma, perishable goods, automotive components, and e-commerce?
I mean, the vaccine distribution, I mean, just to mention that quickly, the vaccine distribution recently has been for us a tremendous success. Now that's not needed. It's been passive pharma, if you like, in terms of cooling, and the vaccines have been generally shipped in sort of 32 kilo boxes with cooling gels, I think, is the technology. So we've made sure that the transit times are as fast as possible. And indeed, we carry no more important cargo than that vaccine distribution that we've done and continue to do. And we carry about, as IndiGo, we've carried around 70% of the vaccines flown in India. And we're very proud of the way that we've contributed to that, because most of the distribution comes out of Pune, some out of Mumbai, and then Hyderabad. And we have strong schedules into all of those places, and that's why we've been able to get such a high share of that vaccine distribution, 70%, as I say. So that's sort of a foot in the water, if you like, of pharma, of very high volume pharma distribution. But I'm only too well aware that there's another huge market for active pharma or active cooling, and we will gear up for that. as and when we see a market opportunity.
You know, the future of freight is digital, and how have you been driving technology adoption in the cargo business for IndiGo? Because everyone wants the visibility of the shipment from the origin to destination.
Well, we in January 19, we moved our systems to Smart Cargo, who you might be familiar with, and we've been very happy to use that platform to improve our market stance and the way that we deal with customers. And I think it's been very successful. And we added about 6 months ago a shipper app, which has had very large take up. I mean, about half of our cargo is now actually booked on the app, which is fantastic. And we've just added payment gateway to that. And we're doing a number of other things, to try to make sure that people can deal with us easily. And, that we are, as a result, we're their sort of port of first choice when they have cargo to ship, whether they be regular, freight forwarders or whether they be sort of one-off shipments. We want to provide, a very wide distribution channel. And clearly, track and trace is an important part of that. We're not 100% there as yet. It can be quite challenging in India. It slows down the process sometimes when you've got shipments with a huge number of individual packages and so on. So, when I don't claim, and again, I'm a very realistic person, I don't claim we're there yet, but it's certainly an aspiration that we have, is to be completely automated wherever we can. If for nothing else, that just to handle the volumes that we're facing in our various warehouses and with our partners, to handle the volumes, we've got to automate as much as we can. It's very encouraging, but at the same time, very concerning to sort of go down to, for instance, our Mumbai terminal. I was there a couple of months ago, and just to see the volume of freight coming through, and the whole terminal sort of crowded, and people, desperately trying to get their freight accepted on the next flight. And it's exciting, but it's also concerning. And I would prefer everyone to kind of get to a situation where we're planning in advance, capacity in advance. We are operating the whole system under sort of minimum stress where we can.
How important do you think are the emergence of digital marketplaces that connect supply and demand of air freight with easy-to-use cloud-based API-integrated platforms allowing easy listing and discovery of capacity?
I think internationally, if you look at markets like, say, Hong Kong, the outbound market from Hong Kong, these tools are very much accepted and used. I think in India, we still have a little way to go, but we are certainly looking at some of these platforms as being, a way, again, to broaden the distribution. I always say to my team that, frequently, you don't really need to find new business. All you need to do is just service the business which is there properly and reliably and consistently, and people will come to you. So it's not a question of desperately scratching around trying to find air freight. The air freight is there, and if we as IndiGo have a reputation for being the easiest people to deal with and for having the fastest airport to airport transit times and the fastest through the warehouses, etc., then we won't have a problem filling our bellies and filling our freighters. So the whole effort is to try to take a lot of the friction, which inevitably exists in any cargo market, but especially, I think, here in India, take a lot of the friction out, and try, to service the demand that there is to a very high level. A simple, I'll give you a very simple example. Our terminal at Delhi, in the mornings, it's very congested and crowded because of the demand. And that's great. And as I say, it's wonderful to see. But, there are some of those trucks waiting, to come into our terminal who will actually divert, and they'll go into a competitor's terminal just because they can't afford to hang around any longer. And that's business that was coming to us but then at the last minute go somewhere else. And that's the kind of friction that we have to get out of the system. And we try and work with our partners, not just Smart Cargo, but work with the terminal operators and so on to make sure that we are able to service the cargo which is available for us to take.
Willy, my last question is, I just would like you to reflect on the role of freighters or the main tech capacity in the overall global air freight industry. Will they continue to play a critical role even after the full belly capacity comes into play with the return of full wide body long haul passenger services?
Hard to predict, but I think actually pre-pandemic, you did see the big players. There had been a sort of consolidation, if you like, in the pure freighter segments. And, we all know the big players were doing okay. And I think you'll see that come back. And we, by no means, are a big player. I mean, our focus will be on narrow bodies domestically and within the region, outside the sort of huge lanes between China and the Trans-Pacific to North America or China, Europe, for instance, outside those big markets. And I think you'll see, as I say, it'll probably return to what it was, where the big players with the big freighter capacity will be fine. But we think there's an opportunity below that in narrow body capacity to provide some feed for those guys, but also that there are individual markets which need narrow body capacity, particularly within our region. I've talked about China, talked about India, Vietnam, the Gulf. There are specific lanes where I think there is demand for, again, not just express shipments or not just the e-freight or everything. There's a wide range of stuff, and it's just a matter of finding where that is. And as I say, our cargo in cabin experience has helped the team very much in that. And I'm very confident looking forward that we as IndiGo will find a very profitable niche for our 4 freighters initially.
Willy, it was such a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely enjoyed it, Reggie, and thanks, Reggie.
That was Willy Boulter, Chief Commercial Officer at IndiGo. I hope you enjoyed watching this interview. If you like what we do, please do share it with your friends. Also, if you are not a subscriber of our YouTube channel, please do subscribe now and click the bell icon so that you do not miss any of our new videos. Join me next Monday as I bring a new guest for a one-to-one conversation here in Cargo Masterminds presented by cargo.one. Until next Monday, take good care of yourself and have a great week ahead. Thank you.